Uh, okay, hello everyone. That's Mednik Breau and Introduction to Homefronts. This is a recording separate from the class because in the class we had technical issues with the internet. So I'm recording separately without audience, locally without internet. So let's start. Homefronts are a group activity for 5 players. I'm going to discuss in in the next 2 slides why 5 players, but basically 5 players using T1 cruisers. You use T1 cruisers for the reason that larger ships are not allowed through the acceleration gate that waits you at the entrance. So no battle cruisers, no battleships. And also, Navy, T2 Pirate and T3 cruisers are also not allowed through this gate. It doesn't let them pass, so you can't use them. That's why we use T1 cruisers. That's the best we have. Optionally, you can use frigates and destroyers if you wish. They can pass the gate. And in fact, you can use even pirate versions and navy versions. But at the moment, there are no strategies I know that somehow utilize that. T1 cruisers are more or less better for this type of content. Also, some not so standard ships can pass the gate, and the main the interesting for us are ventures. Some of the types, as we're going to discuss further, are going to use ventures. And haulers of different type you can also can pass through the gates. Also only T1 haulers, the most simple ones. And we're going to need them in one type. And the goal of this activity is to make ISK. It produces ISK in form of payouts. We're going to discuss them in a moment. It doesn't produce any standings. Well, a bit of loss with pirates, but that's not very important. It doesn't produce any loot. Again, there is a small exception, but not very important. It doesn't produce any LP, loyalty points, at all, unlike missions or faction warfare or several others. It produces only raw ISK, nothing else. Well, and that's convenient. You don't need to convert it somehow, etc., etc. You just get ISK and you're happy. And there are 6 types of those Homefronts, each of them featuring a special scenario. So, like different scenarios have different goals, you're doing different things, and so they require different group composition. I'm not going to overview this. This is on the slide so that you can reread later if you wish, but we're going to go through each type separately later in a moment. So one final thing is that there are 6 totally different types, but also each type has subtypes depending on which empire space you are in. Basically, different empires have different enemies inside of the sites, so they deal different damage type, and you need to deal different damage type, and also they have different electronic warfare. So basically there are variations that matter a bit, but not too much. The tactics are the same no matter which exactly empire space you are in. So the tactics are the same, therefore you can just use them. Just you need to fit your ship slightly differently depending on the space. We are going to cover this at the end. So, why do we do Homefronts? It is, as I said, ISK making activity. The margins are around 60 to 150 million ISK per hour. That's not, that doesn't include all possible, maybe like lows and highs, but I picked a very large range to more or less estimate the possible lowest and possible highest. And it happens in complete safety, in high sec, unless you do something not recommended and go through low sec, for example, at some moment to fly from one side to another. That's not a good idea. But if you stay in high sec, it's kind of safe. You are not a juicy target in your simple ships, so no one is going to bother you. And extremely low skill requirements. You can join more or less on day 1 or day 2. You don't really need to train any skills almost, just some faction cruiser skills and some middle weapons maybe. It depends on which type you're targeting. The requirements are easy enough. There are different fits available. I'm going to talk later where to find some fits, and you can simulate a fit. And the basic rule is that if you can fly it, then you can fly it in Homefronts. Sometimes there are types of content where you technically can fly the ship, but in fact you need much higher skills to be able to do the content. It's not so with Homefronts. If you can fly the ship, that's enough. You don't need further skills. But they, of course, will help a bit. While ISK making is the main part, also they are a social activity. As they're a group activity with 5 people, it means you are interacting with them, you can talk with them, etc., etc. So on one hand, you make friends, you socialize, etc., etc. On the other hand, you can try some fleet gameplay if you are not familiar with it already. So you can practice how fleet works, how you do combat in fleet, etc., etc. In particular, one interesting part is that you can practice flying Logi. Let me remind for those who are not familiar with it that Logi in Eve-UNI is equivalent of healer in other games. So playing Logi might sound slightly difficult at first, because in many games healers are more difficult than DPS, but it's not so much difficult in fact in Eve-UNI, and I encourage everyone to also try. We're going to see in details in which types and for which reasons we use Logi. So that covers why we use Homefronts. And people who are interested in ISK making, often when they see group activities, they say, okay, I will do it solo and get all the rewards. Well, developers guessed this would happen and introduced a special reward curve, which says that if you are alone, for example, you are getting 6 million and that's it. But if there are 5 of you, each of you gets 17 million. So everyone gets a bonus for other players in your group. Those numbers on this curve, they are from before the patch. The expansion that happened June 2024 nerfed the amounts by approximately 9%. So the 70 million is now something like 15 million. But it is not a very big nerf, and also it is partially compensated by pirate bounties which were upped, etc., etc. I'm not going into details right now, but basically the reward is still more or less following the same curve. So this curve automatically means you really want to have 5 players, not less, not more. If for some reason, for example, one player has to go and you are 4 now and you are trying to find the 5th, you can do one side with 4 people, for example, if you wish, right? You will get less payouts, but well, you are not wasting time. You are still flying and doing stuff. But if you don't wish, you can just make a break or something. It depends. So basically 4 and 6 are not extremely bad. They are possible, but generally you always want 5. That's it. So this was the introductory part. Let me produce an overview for the remaining part. For the next 30 or something minutes, I'm going to discuss every type and go through some tactics for those types. After this so this is the middle part, and this is the most important part. This is really information. For the remaining part in the end, I'm going to overview the types after we learn each type, I'm going to overview them together, covering their advantages and disadvantages, which are good, which are bad, and for what reason. Then I'm going to talk about competition from other players. Other players also want to run those sites, and you might want to run the same one. What to do, when this happens, and so on, we're going to cover a bit, not in too much details. I'm going to discuss how to find a fleet or form your own fleet, and how to use public channels and which public channels are available. I have some list. I'm going to cover finding the sites to run, and in the end I'm going to cover electronic warfare that happens in those sites. That's a brief overview. As right now it's not a live class but a recording, I can say that on YouTube I'm going to do some time steps, I hope. So let's start. Metaliminal meteoroid. I picked this to be the first type because it's more or less the most easiest one. The aim of this type is surprisingly not to damage the enemies or something, but instead to mine a rock. There is an asteroid in the field like depicted in this picture, and you need to lock it on and apply your miners on this asteroid. And that's it. You orbit the asteroid, you mine it, and when it ends, when the entire asteroid is mined out, the site ends and everyone gets a payout. If there are 5 of you, everyone gets usual 15 million ISK. But if the nuance is that there are enemies and they try to damage you, that's life. You are mining while someone is damaging you. That's not very convenient. For that reason, typically players use 4 miners and 1 Logi ship. I remind you once again, Logi means healer. This Logi is going to repair those miners so that they are not too damaged. And that's it. Basically, the tactics is really it. You are mining, Logi is healing. That's it. People usually use Skith as the repairer, and also you can use Osprey, and you can, if you shield tank your ventures, and in Gallant and Candari space we usually shield tank everything. But it's up to you. There are many different compositions you can try. You can replace ventures if you wish with some T1 cruisers. There are some variants like Moa and Vexer. Some people like it, some people dislike it. There are many alternatives. But the basic composition works just fine. There is also an additional trick exactly for this type. So for all other types, you always run with 5 people, but for Metaliminal Meteoroid, you can run with 6 people. You use a 6th person in a hauler, and he doesn't go into the site, so he doesn't get payouts. Instead, after the site finishes, everyone gives him their ore, and the hauler takes all this ore, and the miners, they fly to the next site, and the hauler takes this ore and sells it to NPC. NPC are taking all the ore from those asteroids for 5,000 each or something. The result is basically another payout similar to those payouts. So this hauler will get the same payout as the other 5 people, approximately. Instead of using 6 person, everyone can sell their ore separately. But that takes time. You need to warp to NPC station, etc., etc. That's not very convenient. Alternatively, if you don't have a 6th person, for example, you can just throw this ore away. It is kinda better, in my opinion, to throw ore away and go to another site than to go to NPC station and sell it, because that wastes time. But it is up to you. There are many alternatives here. So that's a brief overview of Metaliminal Meteoroid. Let me go next to raids, the most interesting type in my opinion. Raids are more or less most similar type to traditional group content in different MMOs. you have several DPS, and there are enemies spawning. So there are many enemies that are not very important. They damage you, that's life. But there is one important enemy that spawns, and that's an enemy hauler. In this picture, you see, for example, a badger among the enemy. And it spawns, and it contains some loot. Your goal is to kill this hauler and take this loot. However, there is a nuance. This loot, it is very big, and you need to get 3 of them and put them into a container on the other side of the battlefield. There is something like 60 to 80 kilometers between the place where the hauler spawn and this container. So you need a hauler. The composition is 3 DPS, 1 Logi to heal them all, and 1 hauler. The hauler will take the loot, go from this point to this point, and put it into the container. After this happens, everyone gets the payout, our usual 15 million ISK. So that's the process. You fly towards this hauler, kill it, then wait for another to spawn, kill it, then wait for another to spawn, kill it, and then our hauler, the friendly one of your group, takes the loot from here to here. That's it. So this is site is good because it is kind of fast. If you do everything correctly, you do it more or less faster than other sites, so you get more pay in an hour, for example, because you do sites faster. However, this is the most variative site. If you make some mistakes, and it's quite easy to make mistakes, then your time is going to be much slower. So this type requires some, well, experience. And on the other hand, the best way to get experience is just to try. We typically use shield composition. So the shield logi are Skith and Osprey. You can pick which you like more. I prefer Ospreys for the reason mentioned on the slide about haulers, but some people prefer Skiths. That's up to you. The hauler needs to be shield tank also, and it is very important that the hauler needs 10,500 cubic meters in their cargo hold. To reach this, you will need some cargo expanders, and so you need to fit it very, very carefully. There are some nuances. So, well, there are some ready fits, as I said, in many different channels. I'm going to talk about this later. As for the DPS, we usually use caracals. Those are ships with missiles, heavy assault missiles are usually used. But in fact, more or less any DPS T1 cruiser works. So pick your favorite one. Just don't forget that if your group uses shield composition as we usually use, then your DPS ship also needs to be shield tanked. So some ships are favoring armor, and you are not going to shield tank them good. That's not all. As I said, this is the most interesting type of site. That's not all. Also, those haulers try to warp away. If they warp away, you've lost it. It went away. Now, no loot for you. You need to wait for the next one to spawn. So to prevent this, we use a warp disruptor. This is a module that prevents from warping off. It is often called by players as long point because there is another one called short point. So DPS ships have to feed warp disruptors in addition to all the other modules, so that they can prevent those haulers from going away. Now a bit about tactics. So on this screenshot, you see the spawn positions in Galente space. In Galente space for raids is kinda the most difficult one, but still not very difficult. The difficulty comes from the following. You spawn at this point, but the enemy haulers spawn at this point marked by letter A on the screenshot. And as you see this number 40, there are 40 kilometers between those spots. the your warp disruptor, if it is T1, it has range of 24 kilometers, much less. And if it is slightly better, it have up to 30 kilometers, but still not 40. So, lucky for you, you have several seconds before the first hauler spawns. So when you appear in the site, you want to immediately start moving towards this point. This point never changes, you always are moving to the same point. You start moving towards this point, and on the fly you are trying to lock up the target and warp disrupt it to stop it from warping off. This is slightly complicated to do without experience, but again, the best way to get experience is to try. That's it. Here on this slide, I have a small recap of stuff I've already said. So you need warp disruptors. Usually just every damage dealer uses a warp disruptor. In fact, you need only one. One is enough. But there is electronic warfare from the enemies, so one of you can like lose your target or something. It depends on type of warfare, electronic warfare. We're going to talk about this at the end. But basically one of you might be disabled. Therefore, the others will need to play their role. As I said, the hard part is sometimes to catch the first hauler. So it is important for the Logi not to warp in the first. Only DPS should warp in the first so that they can catch it. And you need to immediately start moving and use your MVD to move faster towards this point. And one additional trick you can use is that you can overheat your warp disruptor. Warp disruptors, when you overheat them, they have better range, so that helps. So if you like raids, if you participate in this activity and find you like them, you might want to tweak your ship, make some improvements. And here I have some ideas for those improvements. Maybe you should ignore the last idea because it's like not relevant anymore, more or less. But the first two ideas are important. You can replace your T1 disruptor by T2 disruptor if you have skills. This makes your range for warp disruptor bigger. Also, you can replace some rigs in your ship by hyper special rigs. Hyper special rigs provide warp speed increase. So why warp speed is very important? Because you can go between different sites faster. You finish one site, you need to fly to another one. With hyper special rigs, you can be faster. But they come in the place where you could have fit some resist rigs. This is a trade-off. You need to carefully design your feed to do this. But for starters, I recommend just taking a ready feed. It won't have any hyper special rigs or anything fancy, but just take a ready feed that is like simple and it works. I'm going to again to note where to find feeds later. That's it. No, that's not it. One more slide on raids for the hauler. So the hauler typically arrives the last. The other players can already start the site without the hauler. They do something, he comes in, he goes to the same spot where the DPS are, because that's where they will have the wrecks of the ships they damage. He waits until he gets 3 pieces of loot and goes to the friendly target, to this container. When you are going, so this is the important part, right? He like relaxes until this moment happens, but now he needs to switch on the their MVD to go faster, and MVD consumes lots of capacitor, and you need to travel 80 kilometers. If you switch on MVD, at some point you will lose all your capacitor. So there is a trick. You can ask your Logi to use their capacitor transmitter, a module that transfers capacitor from the Logi to this, well, in this case, to our hauler. So this way, he has more energy, he can continue to fly fast. That's very nice, if you can manage this. It depends obviously on the logi if they do have enough capacitor. Also, a helpful idea is to overheat your MVD for the first cycle so that you accelerate much faster. Though be careful and don't burn it out. Also, it is important to note that this is the more or less only moment in all those types where skills of the player are quite important. The racial hauler skill like Galente hauler, Caldari hauler, etc., depending on your ship, is important. The more you have this skill, the faster this hauler flies, and it's important to fly fast to reach the target so that everyone gets payout and can fly to other sites. So I recommend the person who will be flying the hauler to have high hauler skill. If you have several people and you are distributing roles in your group, try to find out which of you has higher hauler skill. But again, that's not required. You can start doing this with very bad hauler skill. All you need is to be able to sit in the ship. All the rest is like improvements upon the baseline. Okay, this ends the overview of raids. I'm sorry, it was slightly long, but the other types are easier. Let me now go to emergency aid. Emergency aid is a scenario where there is a friendly target. For example, in this picture, you see a Charon Repatriator, a big friendly ship, and you need to go towards this target and repair it. Enemies are damaging it. You need to provide shield boosts or armor repairs. You are free to choose any type. It just matters that it doesn't die. So you use 5 logi ships and everyone focuses this target and repairs it. Also, the enemies can damage one of you. Sometimes, well, you will need to repair one of you also. That's life. So you can use any of the 4 T1 logi ships, Augurer, Osprey, Skith, and Executor, but typically people prefer Augurers and Ospreys. That's because they are cap chain logi. Cap chain is a term, let me explain it in a bit, in case someone is not familiar with how logi works. Cap chain is when several logi use their capacitor transmitter to transmit energy from one ship to another, from the second to the third, and so on in a circle. This sounds stupid in terms of real-life physics. Why would you transfer energy in a circle? But in Eve-UNI, for some reason, when you use a capacitor transmitter, the target gets more capacitor than you waste. You have to, so one ship loses capacitor, another gains, but the gains are bigger than losses. This violates energy conservation law, but it's helpful. So we embrace this. If you form such a circle, you can get much more free capacitor out of thin air, and that's nice. So you use this cap chain so that everyone has capacitor, and you use your shield boosters or armor repairers to repair the friendly target and each other. That's it. You need to make the target stay alive for 10 minutes. After that, everyone gets 15 million. That's it. That's the entire tactics. Now, there is another type of site that is also for 5 logis. That's Dread Assault. It is similar, but the goal is different. There is also a friendly target. For example, in this picture, you see a Dreadnought Arbiter Karura. And this Dreadnought wants energy. So, I've just said about capacitor transmitters. Well, they are the main goal in this site. Everyone uses their capacitor transmitters on the Dreadnought so that it gets enough energy. After there is a special bar on your screen that fills. After it fills, the Dreadnought has enough energy and it fires its weapons somewhere at some enemy structure. So after that, it has 90-second cooldown. While this cooldown completes, you have nothing to do, but you can use cap chain to transfer energy to each other to fill your batteries, so that everyone is ready for the next cycle. After 90 seconds pass, you can again transmit capacitor to the dreadnought. And you do this 3 times. It needs to be recharged 3 times. After that, everyone gets the payout, the usual 15 million payout. That's it. Also, you might need to repair, again, shield boosts or armor repairs, depending on your fleet composition. One of you, because there are enemies who damage you. So if someone damages you, you need to use repairs. That's life. That's more or less the entire tactics here. So you see that those two types are kind of similar, but you need a slightly different fit for them. For emergency aid, you need to fit more healing modules, shield boosters, or armor repairers in high slots. And for dread assault, you need to fit more capacitor transmitters. There is a combined tactic where people fit a ship with both, and so that they can fly both types of sites. I'm going to mention it later. But right now, let's make a notice that this exists. Theoretically, the same ships can fly both sides. But usually people don't do this, but you can. So, up to this moment, I have discussed 4 types out of 6. Let me name them again. Metaliminal meteoroid, that's mining. Raids, that's DPS and other stuff. And emergency aided dread assault, there are 2 types for 5 logi. There are 2 more types of Homefronts I didn't discuss yet. Let me note that the first 4 are really interesting for everyone, and the next 2 are not used usually. No one runs them. I will go through the reasons, but I want to mention right now there are 4 good types and 2 bad types. Bad doesn't mean like don't do them at all, but like they're not recommended. The reasons are later. So let me come to those 2 bad types again. Bad like in quotes. It's not like really bad, but not optimal. Suspicious signal is an interesting one, but unfortunately not very optimal one. The scenario is as follows. There is a target on the battlefield, some structure, that you want to destroy. But unfortunately, it is invulnerable. It is immune to damage. You can't damage it. So what you should do is you fly to 3 cans that fly here, and you hack them using your data hacking skills. You use the usual hacking minigame. I'm sure more or less everyone is familiar with it. So here on the screen in the right side, you see the hacking minigame, and it is on the easy difficulty, so it shouldn't be a problem for anyone. So you use the hacking minigame, and when you complete it, there will be a 90-second timer. When all 3 cans are hacked and all 3 timers are active, the target becomes vulnerable. You can damage it. So the tactics is obvious, right? Hack 3 cans and damage the target. However, that's not the entire thing. First, as there are 3 separate targets for each can, it means that you need those timers to be active simultaneously. So you want to hack 3 cans in the same moment, not one after another, but simultaneously. To do this, you need voice comms. You need voice comms to be able to hack them simultaneously. You can do this using chat, but it doesn't seem like very effective. So after you hack them, you need to fly to the target, attack it. But there is one more nuance. The target will be active for 90 seconds. And if you wish to kill it during those 90 seconds, surprise, you need 920 DPS or something like this, each of the 5 ships. That's assuming you don't have a Logi. Even if all 5 of you are DPS, which is not so easy because there are enemy ships damaging you, even then you need 920 DPS for each ship. This was before the latest patch. There was a strategy how to do this, but it was fixed. It used Navi issue ships, which are now not allowed through the gate. So unfortunately, at the moment, I don't know any strategy that can do this. So there is no strategy at the moment that does this side in one cycle. If this were possible, it would be very, very good, because with one cycle you can do something like 200 and more ISK per hour. I've seen a screenshot where a person did 17 sites in 1 hour. That was before the nerf, 291 million. A lot. But after the update, it seems that it doesn't work. Vexer could do something like 1000 DPS, but unfortunately, the enemy NPC target drones quite heavily. So they will kill your drones and you won't have any DPS. So at the moment there is no solution known, but maybe some will come later. If you can't damage the target in one cycle in 90 seconds, well, you hack the cans again, and then you need to damage it again. So if you do it in 2 cycles, the ISK per hour is more or less twice lower, and it might be not worth the problems. This is a very inconvenient type of site because you need to a very good feed with self-repairs, or if you take a Logi for the repairs, then you get even less DPS. And then you need to hack something, etc., etc. It's just not very convenient. As far as I know, usually people don't bother with it. Exactly for this reason. But if someone finds a strategy to do it in one cycle, it suddenly becomes very lucrative. So I encourage everyone to theorycraft around this. That being said, suspicious signal, so I hope I made an overview what to do. And now the final one, abyssal artifact recovery. So this one is for some reason the most hardest among all types, and simultaneously it has the least payouts. No idea why this happened. This doesn't make sense, right? Small payouts, but the most hardest one. No one understands why. But basically, like, okay, that's it. Still, let me go through the tactics screen quickly. There are 12 asteroids. Each has some ore inside. You need to mine them. So, similar to metaliminal meteoroid, right? Just 12 asteroids, 12 small asteroids instead of one big one. However, there is a nuance. First of all, you are in a warp bubble. You can't warp off, so you are in the danger of dying. In all the other types, if there is something goes wrong for some reason, you can warp away and you will not die. In this one, you might have problems if you suddenly see that you are dying and don't have time to go out of this warp bubble. Also, in other sites, there are like 5, 6, 7 enemies flying around and damaging you. But in this site, there are new enemies coming in every 2 minutes. So there will be more and more and more and more enemies. That's a huge problem. So, to deal with it, there are many different strategies. You might try to waste some of your resources to damage the enemies, and some to mine, and some to provide Logi. You might try to somehow combine them into one ship. There are some strategies with MOAs and Vexers, which are cruisers that can fit miners in their turret points. But like all the tactics people try still are kinda slow, and the estimated ISK per hour I've heard is something like 40 million or something. Different people disagree on the particular numbers, but everyone agrees they're much lower than other types. So no one really runs those abyssal artifacts other than for fun. Some people, as they're the most complicated ones, some people find it fun to try and to try to figure out some strategies. Still, I hope I did some overview. Last thing I should note is that it has several types of payouts. Each asteroid, when you deplete it, when it finishes, gives a payout for every pilot automatically, but also they drop some loot. They drop some small loot, some artifacts that you can sell to NPCs, and also they drop just ore. You also can sell this ore to NPCs. However, usually ventures are too thin, they will die in this site. And if you use vexers or moas, you don't have space for this ore. So usually people just abandon this ore, they throw it away. Still, okay, I hope I finished more or less this type of site. Now, let me go to overview. We covered 6 types. So let's go through them again and talk about advantages and disadvantages. So here you see those 6 types with approximate minutes, how much time they take, and ISK per hour, again, very approximate. You see wide ranges. That's because it's hard to tell. It depends on many, many factors. Still, rates are very quick, 3 to 5 minutes or something, but your speed depends whether you do them correctly. If you do them correctly, they have better ISK per hour than the other types. However, it has some disadvantages. It requires players of 3 different roles, which have some skill requirements. So if you suddenly find that you have gathered 5 people and everyone wants to be DPS, but no one wants to be Logi, well, you failed. And also there are some problems catching the first hauler, especially in Dodixie, because there is larger distance between the point where you spawn and the point where you need to catch it. And also enemies use sensor dampeners on you. We're going to talk about electronic warfare at the end, but basically this is some problem for you that additionally can make you fail catching the first mule, the first hauler. So I've provided a very wide range of ISK per hour. This is like the range I encountered personally. I once was on a fleet that made 60 million per hour by making lots of mistakes, and it was fun still. We made lots of mistakes because some people were new and someone had a disconnect and so on, and we had competition, and still we made at least 60 million. So that's like not zero. Right? On the other hand, I was in some fleets that made 170 million by doing 10 sites in an hour, and not just 1 hour, but we did it for several hours consecutively, and so got quite a lot. Dread assaults and emergency aids are slower, especially emergency aids. In emergency aid in particular, you can't speed it up. As the goal is to have the target alive for 10 minutes, the site is going to run 10 minutes, not faster. No way to make it faster. Therefore, the margins are worse, especially for emergency aid, much worse. You might notice that, for example, 10 minutes means you can do 6 of them per hour. 6 times 15 million is 150. Why don't I write 150 here? Well, because you have to fly from one side to another, right? If you add this time of flying around, the ISK per hour is something like this. As far as I know, again, those estimates are very rough. You need to figure out what are they for your group, etc. They might be better, they might be worse, but I hope I did well on those estimates. You can additionally, as I said before, fit a ship so that it can run both of those types. Then You will get something in the middle between them, and it will be more convenient. You will have less competition, it will be more convenient. But basically, I would recommend red assaults better, not mixing them, but doing just red assaults, but it depends on competition. We are going to talk about competition in a minute. So metaliminal meteoroids are kind of slower. I think they're something like 4 to 6, maybe 5 to 6 or 5 to 7 minutes. I'm not sure, but people don't like them, and there is some problems with ore and when to whether to throw it away or to somehow sell it, etc., etc. So basically, they're kind of slower than others, as far as I understand. But I haven't measured the ISK per hour, and I'm not sure. I'm not very familiar with them. One important advantage of them is that while raids, for example, require you to have some T1 cruiser skills, like 1 day of training or 2 days of training, but those ones require no skill requirements. Everyone can fly a Venture. You don't need any skill requirements, as far as I know. I didn't try to check the fit on a new character, but I think you don't need anything. I'm not sure. If you do need something, it might be like 1 hour training or something. So that's a plus. Out of 5 people, 4 of them can be totally new characters without any skill requirements. And the final 2 sites, as I said before, are not usually used. So that's it. This is the overview of all of those types. Now let me go to competition. So those sites are combat anomalies in high sec. Everyone sees them, so other players might also want them. Well, that's life. You might encounter some other group doing the same type of sites. So the key point here is to pick your space and time so that this doesn't happen. Most people run in Caldari space. I don't recommend running around Jita because everyone does this, so there is a lot of competition. It will be very frustrating. And even then you can have some manageable ISK per hour, but less than in other spaces and more frustrating. Instead, I recommend other spaces. Galente space is much better, but still has some competition. The best time is before and after downtime. I don't know anything about competition in American time zone. You have to find it out yourselves. And things are more or less good at weekdays. On weekends, it is much worse. Again, I personally don't recommend too much running on weekends, at least in Galente. In Minmatar and Amar space, everything is much better as far as I know. And usually sites are free. No one is running them. Well, when I say no one, it means maybe there is like one fleet that is doing the same. It's fine. 2 fleets can do the same type of size without any problems with each other, especially if they coordinate. The problems begin when there are 3 or 4 or 5 fleets. Then you have heavy competition. Please don't warp into sites that are taken by someone else, because it is a huge loss of time. You don't get good payouts if there are more than 5 people, so that's loss for the competition and loss for you. No reason to do this. Also, with the last update, if you warp into site for someone else, you get suspect status, which is also not good. And to check so that this doesn't happen, you need to check whether the site is free or not. Here are some notes how to do this with gscan, but basically with the update, again, if you are warping to a site, if it is already taken, now with the update, you get a warning. You get a warning on your screen that don't go into here, it is taken. So, heed this warning and don't do this. And there are some mind games to be played. If you see that another group is running the same type, you can try to predict which side they are going to choose next, so that you don't go to the same side. There are different ideas how to try to predict, you know where they are, you know which is the closest, and so you predict that are going to go there, then you go to another. Well, you can try those mind games. They're fine. They're fun. Sorry. And maybe this comes with experience, so you try. Okay, now that I don't have internet to switch off, now my headphones switched off. Okay, so if you can try and learn, it's fun. But even if you don't, well, you might fly somewhere, you find that the site is taken. Okay, don't worry, fly somewhere else. If you pick time of day not too much camped, like not weekends, you are always going to find some sites that are not taken with everyone. Maybe you will have to fly around a bit more, but still it's not a huge problem. That's it about competition. And let me say that dread assaults and emergency aids are easy to multi-box. So multi-boxers are running them, especially emergency aid. It is very easy to multi-box because you use your shield repairers on the target and log off. I mean, not log off, but go away. If the ships are repairing each other and the target, well, it's unlikely something bad happens. So that's why there is lots of competition from multi-boxers, so I recommend just leaving them alone and not bothering with them. But again, you have to research your time zone and your space. Dread assaults are easy to multi-box but have less multi-boxers, so you can try them. Raids are quite good, so they are bad for multi-boxers, but good for other people, so you have to check. One way to check is to check some channels where people try to find groups. If you see that if you want to fly, for example, Galento raids, and you see that some other group also is flying Galento raids, they are, for example, looking for the fifth person, well, you can assume they're going to be competition for you. So you can maybe make a decision and, for example, say, okay, there is another group running raids, let's switch to Dread Assault. It is up to you how you manage this. As I said before, there is a strategy of fitting a ship so that it can run two different types. It helps with competition, right? And those three types don't have much competition, especially the last two, because no one wants them. And you also don't want them, so well, that's it. So that's more or less the overview. Now, what next? I don't remember. So making a fleet. So you might want to join someone's fleet or make your own. So you might want to make a fleet in Eve University or with people from other corporations. For the case of Eve University, there is a pink PvE channel in Discord. If you don't see it, you need to check the checkbox for the PvE group in Auth. We have a web application, Auth. I hope everyone is familiar with it. And there are checkboxes for different groups to join. So in ping PvE, people ping their Homefront fleets. You need to ping it not going in 1 minute, but maybe some time beforehand. And please specify where you are going to run, Dodixie or somewhere else, and when, obviously. And also you might specify whether you have some loaner ships for other players or not. Basically, people who run them a lot, they buy some extra ships and they can give them to people who don't have a ship. The ships are much cheaper than the payouts we obtain from the sites, so it's not a problem to buy some extra ships. So you obviously have to choose the type and to mention it in your announcement. And when you have your 5 people, you will have to organize by distributing your roles. For example, if it is raids, then someone needs to be logi, someone needs to be hauler, so you need to discuss who is who, and so on. If you are in Dread Assault or Emergency Aid, then you are 5 logi, you need a cap chain. Everyone transmits capacitor to another. You need to figure out what is the order of this chain. Usually people use alphabetical order, and so on. If you have someone new, maybe someone who didn't watch this class, or still you have some detail, you need to figure out some details with them, to talk with them, etc., etc. Don't forget all this stuff. Don't forget to check that everyone knows what they need to do, etc. That's it. And what if you want to find a fleet not in Eve-University but with just public people, like in some public channel? So the most important public channel is Homefront operations, like this. I'm going to attach this PDF, this slide deck, to the video, I hope, so that you can download it, and this channel name is going to be there, so we can copy it if you wish. So this is a very active community which usually does raids, and usually they do them around Dodixie because Jita is usually too crowded. They have their own Discord. I'm going to post the link. So it is not very active, but it has some feeds inside. So if you join it, you can take the feeds from this Discord. Also, again, if you are from Eve-University, then we have a Homefronts channel, and it also has some feeds inside. Also, there are in-game channels Homefront like this for some reason, which has Eve-University feeds. If you know the Eve-Uni password, check the corporation bulletin if you're in Eve-University. And there is this channel Homefront Runner feeds for some channel Homefront Runners, which has also feeds, so feel free to check it. And there are some other channels not so important. Homefront Operations itself has in their message of the day some links. Feel free to browse them. There is Homefront Runners channel that is also LPG community, but as it has more or less the same people as the first one, well, no reason to look in 2 channels simultaneously if all people are the same, so people use this one, not this one. But still, this one theoretically it exists, but you can join if you wish, but it's not active. If you are Russian, you can, or no Russian language, you can join this one. They did mostly signals before the patch, and now they do mostly Dread Assault, as far as I know. And also there is this chat. You can join it if you manage to somehow type this. This is a small challenge. But if you join this channel, find the link to it somewhere. It is a coordination channel. People drop the system name into the chat so that everyone knows you are going to this site. So you can look at the channel names and you are going to be able to know which sites are already taken. That's usually around Jita, not in other spaces. So if for some reason you are flying around Jita, though I don't recommend it, you can use this channel to find out which sites are taken. The site names will be mostly in Chinese when Chinese people are flying around, but if you click on the site name, you will see information in your own game language. So you will see the name of the system. That's it. I'm sure there are many other channels that I don't know. Please feel free to recommend them to me, and I will continue. So, finding the sites. 2 more topics left: finding the sites and Ivor. So, finding the sites. As I said before, Homefronts are combat anomalies in high sec only, and when you complete one, another respawns. We don't really know, does it respawn immediately or after 15 minutes? There are conflicting information, but even if immediately, then maybe it respawns far away. We don't know exactly the details, but basically you do them, they respawn. You do them, they respawn. And so you need to look where the next one responds where you want to go. So you want some member of the fleet, usually the fleet coordinator, to be responsible for that. Someone is finding the next target, and to do this, you don't just randomly fly away, that would be very inefficient, but instead you use agency and opportunities windows. Both have the same function, but some differences. They have some advantages and disadvantages. Let me not read this from the screen, but instead show you the next screen. So here is the interface of the agency. In this, so you select home encounters Homefront operations, and in this middle part, you have 30 systems which have, well, some Homefronts inside. At the moment of this recording, they are bugged after the expansion, and some of them will show 0 sites in system, which is very unhelpful, but we hope it will be fixed soon. So you go through them. Unfortunately, there is no filtering. If, for example, you are looking for Dread Assaults, you can click on one of them and you see, aha, it has raids. Okay, you don't need it. So unfortunately, you can't really filter or something. You just go to the next one, click this one, and look what is the site in it. Then click this one and look what are 2 sites that are in it. And you so click, 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 click until you reach some that you like. That's it. Then you tell the system name to your group and everyone flies there. So the advantage is that it checks 30 results. In a moment you are going to see opportunities which checks only 20. The disadvantage is that you need to click through every name and so on. And also there are some other, there are some other like disadvantages people talk about. I'm going to talk about them later. Right now, let me go to opportunities. Opportunities, in the opportunities window on the left hand side, you click this button, Homefront Operations, and you will see a window like this, which lists up to 20 opportunities, usually 20. In this case, it lists only 12 because I'm in Stuckman. This is my screenshot. When I was taking this screenshot, I was in Stuckman, and it is on the border of the high sec. So there are not enough sites near to Stuckman. They are all far away. If you are in Dodixie, you will see 20. But again, that's 20 not of your type. It's 20 overall. Some of them are going to be the ones you need, but not all of them. In this search window over here, you can type like this, raid, for example, hit enter, and now they are filtered. You see only raids. You see that one of those 12 is raid. It is in 4 jumps. You can go there. Again, usually you will find something like 3. 3 is a good number. It means you don't have too much competition. Sometimes 4 is good. If you see 1, well, again, from Stuckman, it's not a problem, but if you see 1 from Dodixie, it might mean someone has eaten all of them. So maybe you don't want to undock and instead you want to choose some other type. So, as I said, the advantage of agency is that there are 30. Here you have 20. But that's not all. Also, there are rumors that they respawn, that they show in opportunities faster. When they respawn, they sometimes appear in opportunities but don't appear in agency. However, that's how I see it. That's my, I've seen it happen like this. But other people also claim the opposite. Some people say that they saw that sometimes sites appear in agency but don't appear in opportunities. Well, you have to try, right? Sometimes people try to use both and switch between them back and forth to try to find at least something. That's life. So, I hope I provided a bit of overview on the interface. Finally, let me go to Ivor. So if some of you are familiar with PvP, there is nothing interesting for you here. But if you are not familiar with PvP, you might be not familiar with Eve-UNI because it's not usually used in PvE too much. So let me have a quick overview of what Eve-UNI exists and what we do against it. So enemies can use Vivifiers and Painters, target Painters. Both increase your incoming damage in different way. And basically that's not nice, but you can't do anything with it, okay? You are receiving more damage, that's it. Well, you don't need to do anything with it. Just know that you are going to receive more damage. Typically that's good, because more damage means your Logi needs to repair more. That's not a huge problem. It's not hard. It's better to have this type than the other types. So usually this is a good sign. Next, enemies can use capacitor neutralizer. It decreases your energy in your capacitor. So most of those neutralizers appear in Dread Assaults where you need capacitor. Well, but good news, you have capacitor chain. Every ship uses some of its capacitor to create more capacitor to the next ship. So this way you have lots of capacitor. So it's not a huge problem. It's not very important. And again, it's not like you can do anything about it, right? On one hand, it's not very important. On the other hand, it will exist no matter what you do. So ignore it. Now the next three types you don't ignore. The first one, and the most common one, it will be in many sites, as you will see in the table on the next slide, is ECM, also known as jamming. ECM, if someone applies ECM to your ship, then you lose your target lock suddenly. And for like 1 minute or something, you cannot target anything new. So you are like stuck. You can't do anything at all. You are like flying in the space without any goal and like anything to do. To counteract this, you can use sensor boosters and signal amplifiers, mid and low slots, respectively, that give you some resistance against jamming, so it doesn't happen with some probability. One particular optional thing you can add is load an ECCM script into your sensor boosters. This makes your sensor boosters to provide even more counter ECCM. So if you know the site you are going to has ECM, you can use sensor boosters in your feed, and if you use some feed made by someone else, they will be there, and you can take this script with you. It's the recommendation. And also there are some sensor compensation skills. If you train them to like 2, for example, you don't use much skill points. It's very easy to train something to 2, and it will help very small bit, but still better than nothing. Now there is also weapon disruption. That's some type of electronic warfare that makes your weapons, turrets and missiles, to work worse. Well, there are ways to counteract it using special modules listed here. But basically, again, if you're from Eve University, it is unlikely you will see them because we usually fly in Galente space. There is no such warfare, electronic warfare there. But generally, if you encounter them, you need those modules, or you might want some ship that uses other weapon system like lasers, for example. Tracking and guidance disruption do nothing against lasers, so it might be a good choice. Again, all of this advice is more or less about fitting the ship, not how to fly it. And finally, there are sensor dampeners. In fact, this appears in Galente space, that make your locking range much smaller and longer lock time. This is also very frustrating. It doesn't make you lose your already locked target, but makes harder to lock a new target. And the same counterplay is as with ECM, also sensor boosters and signal amplifiers. The only difference is that now you want to load your sensor boosters with other scripts. Targeting range script helps if you don't like this locking range, Or if you don't like log time, you can use scan resolution script. Alternatively, you can not use both, then you get half the bonus for this one and half the bonus for this one, which is also fine. That's it. And let me produce a table. This table, you can see a similar one in the wiki. And there is this table pinned in Eve University Discord in Homefronts channel. So this table provides an overview for which subtypes exist. So for example, in Galanter raids, my favorite type, you can see that the enemies apply sensor dampeners. So here, consulting the previous slide, you need sensor boosters or signal amplifiers. And also that the enemies produce thermal and kinetic damage. So when you are fitting your ship, you will need to have some thermal and kinetic resistance against this. That's you just, again, if you are using a ship, sorry, if you are using a ship fit from somewhere else, it will already have all this. But sometimes this table is helpful, for example, to understand, in fact, what is some fit for. Sometimes people publish fits but don't explain too much what was the reason for them. Consulting this table, you can match the resists that are in the fit to the damage type in this table and understand, aha, this was a ship for Galanter raids, for example. Some damage types are different, some damage types are similar. In particular, Galanter raids and Caldari raids share the same thermal and kinetic, so you can fly the same ships in both if you need. So if, for example, you start in Jita for some reason, again, I don't recommend it, but other people fly it. If you start in Jita and you see too much competition, you can go to Dodixie. You just need to change your script. In Caldari there is ECM, so you're going to use ECCM script in your sensor booster, and in Galente you're going to use some other script which you prefer, or maybe just unscripted, just load the script out. Though, as everyone knows, between Jita and Dodixie there is the Uedama system. If you are in a cheap ship, this doesn't matter at all, but if you have some expensive modules because you like them, you might be wary of passing through. That's it. So I think I covered everything I wanted. Thank you for watching this video. Please leave the comments. This is one of the first version. I'm going to update this later and maybe do another video later. So if you notice any mistakes, please write me on YouTube or in Discord or whatever. I hope to fix all the mistakes. Thank you again. Good luck.